Mr. Tom Begley, welcome to the third episode of Damnation Versus. How are you, pal?
I'm very well, mate. Thank you for having me.
Not a problem. A pleasure. So for the folk, most folk will know you as the chap for Bossk, but you also work behind a lot of stages. A wee bit of your resume. You're the tour manager, or have been tour manager for Converge, Deafheaven, Monster Truck, UM86. You get involved in the merchandise for the likes of Bring Me the Horizon and Cult of Luna. And strangely, you've also been out with Dandy Warhols and Busted, which we'll come back to. So it's great to have you in the podcast now when we've got these campaigns like We Make Events, and you're pretty much you're the face. You're the people when you're seeing these guys going down the streets with the flight cases. It's for folk like yourself. It's for bus drivers, sound engineers, promoters, venue managers. So tell me a wee bit about just how bad 2020 has been for you personally.
I mean, there's not really. I mean, it started very slowly. It was one of like those things where I lost a tour that I was supposed to be doing because somebody else became available. When all the stuff in Asia started getting cancelled, so like Download Japan, I think it was Summer Sonic. There was a bunch of stuff that got cancelled really early on, and then all that did was put a bunch more crew members in the mix for the work that was already going. So like the first problem I had was a very small one. And then the next tour I had coming was with Whitechapel, which was like in the springtime, like March, April time. And I was pretty confident, even up to like a few weeks before, that was still going to happen. Everything was booked. We had the bus booked, flights booked. Everything was ready. Everything was ready to go. And then all of a sudden, it was just like, oh wait, no.
Where was that tour for? Was that an American tour or through Europe or the whole?
No, it was over here. It was doing those Impericon festivals. It was right. It was all based around. It was based around maybe 6 German festivals, and then there was the UK tour on the end of it.
Okay.
But it just wasn't possible to do it without doing the festivals.
And so you get the news? Would you just drop you an email and say, because you'd have been tour managing that? Let's rewind a bit, because we're assuming that everyone who's listening or watching knows exactly what a tour manager does. Tell us a wee bit. I've mentioned some of the bands you work for. What does a tour manager do?
It depends. Kind of one thing I've learned recently over the last few years is that every band needs something different in that department. There's no rule book that you do the same thing for everybody. Almost every band has different needs, different crew, like every band's different that I work for, especially. Like the rules that apply for Converge, for example, don't apply to Monster Truck, and then there's rules that apply for Monster Truck that don't apply for Converge. So some bands do a lot of their own stuff, and some bands do very little. So it depends on the artist, really. But I mean, I always work really closely with the artist managers, and their agents too, in terms of logistics and where tour starts and where tour finishes, and it's like moving all the bits of the puzzle around beforehand and then moving all back again afterwards is obviously a huge part of it.
So if you've got this Whitechapel tour, at what point, how much work have you done in advance of that tour starting, and then how are you told that
all of it?
Okay, well that's a good example again for the listener. So the listener might be, well, what could you possibly do before you start? Surely you're the day, you make sure you get to the venue, you make sure the band get their food tokens, you make sure that the promoter, you guys are working the thing. What do you do before the Whitechapel even leave their homes?
I mean, some of it's to do with, booking flights, making sure the baggage, if you got flying, but again, every band's different. So for example, those guys, they travel pretty light. They don't have much stuff when they fly. So you got to book, you're booking 7 people's flights for international flights with baggage allowance and hotels and logistics, and you kind of have to think of it as like a diagram. Like, what do they call it? Those Venn diagram things where it's like, have you done this? Yes. Have you done this? No.
If I saw like a flowchart, I'm not sure of them, but I get what you mean. Yeah.
I have a very basic one of those in my head that I kind of run through. And over the years, there's been certain stuff that I've caught that's been like, okay, Paris, for example, no bus parking. That means that when you arrive, all the logistics of the buses in Europe are very specific about how far bus drivers can travel in certain. It's very regimented and very strict. It's all digital. It's like a truck driver's taco, when they can only drive so many hours and have to take break, and like that these days in touring Europe is the hardest part.
Okay, so you've got this mapped out through Germany, these festivals for Whitechapel, and not to throw those guys under the bus, but do you do you get paid for that work, or does the payment for work really just, no, you do get paid for that? So you weren't left high and dry for weeks of advancing?
When I first started out, I definitely ended up getting the short end of the stick with that. But as I got more, I was like, oh wait, hang on, you mean you charge advancing time? Oh really? How'd you do that? So I mean, nowadays I usually do a very basic rule of, for every week that the tour is long, I charge 1 day's pay for it.
Okay, for the advancing.
Yeah, well, and advancing and unadvancing. So just like the last show doesn't just end. Like there's always stuff to do at the beginning. I have to do all the touring accounting. I have to submit reports of merch income, and say there's loads. There's now, for some of the bands I work for now, there's actually probably more to do after than there is before.
Okay.
Because sometimes all the gear's got to move to another country, or like the tour bus has to go back to the UK, or people have to fly, or there's loads of little moving parts that might happen.
So pesky wee things that we see, like bands will fly in, do the 1 day at Damnation and leave all the merch. That's your responsibility as tour manager to make sure that gets back to Sweden or America or whatever. Which I take it must be a bit of a ball breaker.
Oh, I mean, I've done almost every version of disaster end of tour ever. So I've got like a good gauge of what has to happen at the end.
Right. Okay.
The end. No one cares at the end. Everyone's really excited on the first day. Everything's cool. Everyone's like ready to work hard, and everyone's like, "Yeah, everybody, what's going on?" After 6 weeks, they're like, "When am I flying? Where am I going? What terminal?" Like, and it's like no one cares at the end. They're just like, "I want to go to my family." And
you're left trying to pull together the separate pieces to make sure, because at the end of the day, a lot, especially with merchandise, that's tens of thousands of pounds worth of stock that you need to make sure it gets back to wherever it needs to get to.
Yeah. Well, as I've got more experience, I've kind of got used to the fact of the easiest way to deal with that is sell it all. It's easier if you get to the end and there's 2 boxes left. Right, that's easy.
Yeah, good idea. So you had Whitechapel, that get pulled from under you. Did you have longer term plans, or was the tail end of the year going to be more Bossk?
Well, we were trying to fit in a tour for Bossk in November. We were trying to tour then, so I kind of had that penciled for off time for that. And we were supposed to be doing some festivals in August. We had, what was it? We had a Bloodstock show, we had the Orange Goblin show, and then we had a festival in Norway and a festival in Paris. They were the first things that we got cancelled. So I'd held August off for that.
Okay.
So, but I mean, other than that, I was busy the whole year. I had all sorts. Me and Whitechapel have been working together since 2008, and I've been with them all the time. So we were supposed to be doing, I think, 2 US tours, a European tour, and a UK tour this year.
And what happens in a situation? So you're obviously often with Converge, and the last Monster took you away quite a lot. And the last time I'd seen you, you gave me this T-shirt at Deafheaven, which isn't really.
Looks good on you, that, mate.
For the listeners, that's bright pink T-shirt for Deafheaven that kind of matches my complexion.
Yeah, mate.
And shit, what was he even asking there now? So then these other bands get in touch with you and say, Tom, we're organising something for the tail end of the year. We're going to come back to Europe. Are you just booked and that's the end of it, or is there a discussion there, or how does it work?
It depends. Converge is the only band that if they book me, that's it. No negotiation. That's me doing that. And I've got quite a lot of people that I can now. So like, if I get something that clashes together, like there's 2 artists that want me to go out at the same time. Depending on which one of them it is, I know enough people that I can vouch for that can do my job in my absence, and I will work with them on the tour.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't do a Whitechapel tour a couple of times last year or whatever, and I've got pals that I can put in on it and sub in and sub out, because I know those bands really well. I can pick someone that will be able to do what they need.
Okay. And how do you become a tour manager? How do you even start?
Good question. To be honest, that is the most asked question I think I've ever had from doing this. And
I'm a bit pissed off, because that's the whole point of this, is not to ask the questions that you've heard a million times. But anyway, I haven't heard the answer, so hit me
with the hardest answer. One day I was selling merch for Architects for a long time, just doing merch. They didn't even have a tour manager. It was just me, the 5 lads in the band, and they didn't even have a sound guy. And I just ended up, as they started doing bigger, more. They just got more stuff to do. You just ended up doing more bits, more like extra bits, other than just selling T-shirts and giving someone else the cash. I then became responsible. I think as soon as you become responsible for the cash, then it's like, okay, well, if I'm being responsible for the merch cash, well, I might as well go speak to the promoter. And how do you settle a show? Oh, you just go pick up the 200 quid or whatever. Because at the beginning of doing that, it's easy. Like well, easy-ish. Like, I'm not doing any figures. It's just like, how much are you getting paid? 500 quid. There you go. See you later. Bang, bang. And then I would start doing the accounting and all that sort of stuff. And it just sort of like grew like, hang on a minute. What? But I didn't really also know until I toured with tour managers.
Yeah.
Because at the beginning, the bands I was working with, no one had a tour manager. So it was like, everyone was just sort of figuring it out without one. And then it just became being like, oh, well, do you want to be in charge? Okay, go on then.
Okay. And what stage? Because I was thinking that in prep for this interview. We've seen bands, they come and they get 20 grand for their fee, you pay a tour manager 100, 200 quid a day, whatever the shift rate is. That makes total sense, especially when you imagine, or you know, the amount of grief a tour manager does for a band to make sure that everything's just in place. But I've also had bands that show up and they're getting 100 quid and they've got a tour manager. So at what point does it, in your experience, does it make sense for a band to, right, we're at the stage now where a tour manager makes sense?
It depends. It depends on the band. It depends on the dudes in the band. Depends how they run it. Depends on, you know, if they, I mean, obviously some of it comes down to budget. Can we afford to pay another person? But sometimes hiring a tour manager will get you more money in other places, because you're hiring someone like with an area. Same way, if you're going to book a flight, you use a travel agent. Or if you're going to book a, you know, everyone has an area of expertise. And if you hire someone with an area of expertise specifically like that, then you will save money.
Yeah, you could literally make your feedback. You can make a tour manager's feedback if you get a good tour manager, making sure everything's planned out for you.
Yeah, and like just simple stuff of budgeting. Some bands and management sometimes don't even know how much stuff costs. Like I've seen it before when they've sent me a budget and go 5 hotel rooms in London, 50 quid a night budget per room. It's like, that's just not going to happen. Like, that's just not. Well, I mean, it might, but it won't be pretty.
No, there's no one in gloves.
Yeah, and it won't be where you want it to be either. So like, I will look at that and go, well, that's not possible. So your budget is 500 quid short on that day. Like, which is everyone. It's like I'll know that just by looking at it. They won't know that until they go on the Travelodge website and try and book 5 hotel rooms in central London. You know what I mean? Like something as simple as that can save bands a fortune. Like just, or me even saying, I've done it before when I first started touring as a tour manager, when I had next to no experience whatsoever, because I'd been doing merch and selling stuff like that before. For example, I know, don't ever send your tour, like you obviously at the beginning of the tour, you might have 20 boxes being delivered. Don't deliver them to Spain.
Right. And why is that?
Because it's just really difficult to deliver anything to Spain. So it's like, it'll just get missed. And then you've missed your 25,000 euros worth of tour stock that you needed for the entire tour. If you don't hire a tour manager, if it's just the band and a booking agent, sometimes the band won't even notice that that's a bad idea.
Right. Stuff like that. Okay. So what are some of the pitfalls or the horror stories that you've encountered down the years with these bands?
Oh, I mean, can't wait to write a book. Horror stories is a good one, because when those things happen, that's why you have a tour manager.
You're worth your weight in gold that day or that moment.
I remember we were in, you name it, mate. Like I've had all sorts of stuff, missing flights. When we were with Washy Seats, when we were supposed to go to America the first time, we hired a guy from Manchester to drive over from Sheffield to take us down to London to get a flight. And obviously the band was a lot smaller then, and they didn't have as much of a budget. So we didn't have any, I was told that we didn't have the budget for like a hotel room at Heathrow Airport, for example. And we had to drive down from Sheffield overnight for a flight at 6 a.m. departure. So it's like we had to be there at 4. So we had to set off at like 2 to get, you know what I mean? Like, so we were going overnight. And the guy that was driving us, it was snowing. It was like November time, end of November time we were going, I think, or something. And it was snowing, and he got stuck on Snake's Pass in the snow, and we couldn't get to the airport. We just missed the flight. Right. Even though, like, it got to, I think he maybe got to about 3:30 in the morning, and I had to phone the manager and was just like, "There's no way we can get to London before the flight. It's just not possible." And what happens there? So you're phoning the manager, but I take it the manager's sitting in America at the time. Yeah. And he's dead. And you're like, well, I've got this band that are due to get into Europe or back to America or whatever, and we're stuck there. So what happens in that moment? Because nobody's getting into their back pocket and pulling out $3,000 and getting new flights. What happens? $7,000 that cost. Because we couldn't get, because in a situation like that, you can't get a refund, because it's not the airline's fault that you can't get to the airport. Yeah. And then I think, what did we end up doing? They ended up having to book another flight, I think, because obviously the tour was starting the next day. And I will always remember we chose to book the flights originally one day before the tour. Because I've done stuff before when you arrive on day one, which gives you like no room to like be late, like basically. And there's a million things that can happen on the way. And like luckily we had a day buffer. So all we did was book another flight the next day and went down to the airport the night before.
Okay, so you're
and the band
starting.
like a fundraiser or something to help pay for the flight money or whatever. Like
That was pretty much my next question. So you're starting the tour, as you say, a band. Well, She Sleeps are a big band now, but back then you're saying that's not the kind of money they can afford to lose. So you've now started your first day of the tour, and you're $7,000 in the hole. So
that was a wild one. That I remember it was about 5 a.m. and we were just sat in the band practice room. I think like it was really upsetting for them. That was the first time they were supposed to go to America. They were all gutted and obviously furious. Like, I mean, it was, we were all, I mean, I was livid. Everyone was, it was so, that was really difficult that night.
Yeah. And that's act of God stuff in the term, like, no one's fault you're going to get a snowstorm and then get stuck or.
No, but again, that's why, for example, I've never done that ever again since.
Yeah.
You want to book a 6 a.m. flight? Cool. We're staying at the airport the night before.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Never again.
We're talking about when tour managers are really worth the weight in gold. I saw you at Roadburn and you were there with Converge, but at the same time they also had Mutoid Man there and there was guys for Cave-In, and you were a man with a to-do list 100 deep. So
yeah, that's a great example.
It's something like that. You show up and just like, how do you get through that shift? Or do people recognise at some point, well, I've asked this guy across 3 bands to do 10 different things, and what are those things? Are they looking for food tokens, hotel rooms, what?
At Roadburn, they're very, very good at what do you call it, like artist liaison, artist relations, because they're so used to bands that are coming over from all over the world with nobody kind of driving. You know what I mean? Like there's no one. It's just that you're dealing with. I'm sure with you too. There's like just 5 lads and 3 guitars that came over on a plane, and they're like, "Oh, we're in Leeds. Can you come get?" You know, like they just figure it out. But for example, that specific show, because I know all the guys involved in all those bands, it was actually easier for me to just be like, especially, and for the festival too, because there was a lot of shared members, like the Cave-In stuff. I mean, all those guys are really good friends of mine. So it was just easier for them to just deal with me rather than dealing with like 6 different separate versions of something. It was much easier just to be like, Begley, can you sort this out? Yes, it was just, it was quicker.
And again, for the listener, I mean, I know what you were doing, but what would they be asking you to sort out for them?
Oh, mate. A festival like that, it was something like, food tickets, hotel room check-ins, backline. Brodsky turned up for that doing a Cave-In acoustic show and he didn't bring an acoustic. So that was the first thing. I need a guitar. Right, cool. That's the first thing you definitely need.
Yeah.
I'll go get you.
Another essential, not Converge or Cave-In or any band, but when you speak to tour managers, a lot of tour managers are asked to find substances at other places and other countries. How do you even start? You're sitting in God knows where, Lithuania, and somebody says going to get me a bit of dope. What the hell do you do?
Good question. It depends what it is and where I am and what else I'm doing.
Yeah.
If I've got time to help out, I help out. You know what I mean? If it's the first day of the tour, some of the artists that I work for. Let me say, I know what they want beforehand.
Right. Okay. So it can be sorted.
Like we'll put it this way: Monster Truck are from Canada, and what's legal in Canada? Weed. Yeah. What do you think Monster Truck want loads of when they arrive in the UK?
Aye, exactly. So, and that is the other weird. I mean, obviously the check-ins, the transport, backline, hotels, that kind of jazz is pretty bog standard. The drugs as well, probably bog standard. What do some bands want that you're just about like, right? Okay, I need to get my head in the game for this band because every time I land in a new region, they're going to be looking for something bizarre.
Who's good at that? To be honest, all bands are like that. Oh, there's always stuff like, I mean, I've learned now in my like touring Pelican case, I've got like 15 UK to European adapters. I've got 15 US to European power adapters because no one remembers that. They come all the way over and then they got, and I just got sick of lending ones to like my own ones out. So I'm like, Begley, can I borrow a UK phone charger? Yeah, there you go, mate. I've never seen that again.
And it never fails to surprise me how many bands for Europe show up at Leeds for Damnation and then don't have the plugs. And then we're always running about trying to find extra plugs. If you bring 10, we need 15. When you bring 15, you need 20.
Never have too many of them. I just get, honestly, it can be anything.
Yeah.
Shoes, I've had bands go, I haven't got any stage shoes. I'm like, what? What's wrong with the ones you're wearing? They're shoes, aren't they? Yeah, but I can't play guitar in these. Okay. Right.
And there's no real limit, is there, to what you I mean? You don't sit at your tour manager guide and say, oh, by the way, actually going and getting you new shoes isn't really my job. Everything's your job. And
well, no, sorry, no. The best way to describe that sentence is my job is to make sure the show happens in the best possible way.
Okay,
it's whatever that takes, which can be, you name it. I've gone into tours being the most prepared I felt about anything ever, and then day one I'm just like, are you joking? Like, what?
Sometimes you'll be recommended as a tour manager from one band to the next band. You pick up that job, but you've got no personal relationship with the drummer, the bass player, the singer. So you guys need to bond, so to speak, in day one.
That's the hard part, but I've got good at that.
Right, okay.
Because I've worked with so many. I mean, most bands all have the same problems, pretty much. It's regardless of what it is, it's all kind of the same thing eventually. It's like, you have to be clear with communicating beforehand. Like with bands that you've never worked for before, you have to be like, I try and go over as many things as possible, as even like overkill details. I'm sure like when you've done advancing stuff, you're like, what have I not thought about here? Because there's always something. So it's just, I've got quite good at that, because I think I'm capable enough these days that you can throw me in with anybody and I'll figure it out. Like I know people that work for everybody. So it's like, sometimes it's as easy as just phoning another tour manager or phoning someone.
Yeah.
That'll just say, what is it like? What is the top 10 things this band needs? Like, easy. And then it's easy, because then they go, oh yeah, drummer does this, guitarist does this, blah, blah, blah. I can't get out of bed on time. There's always like heads up you can keep the other crew members, and crew members are really good at that.
Yeah, the last couple of times we met, you usually give me a shout when you arrive in Glasgow. So there was the beginning of last year, you were out with Monster Truck. They were supporting Blackstone Cherry. So you're in the SECC, big 10,000 capacity. Monster Truck have got more dressing rooms than the headline bands at Damnation get. I mean, I get two or three dressing rooms. And the next time I see you out with Deafheaven, and then in the garage again, another excellent venue, but much smaller, shared dressing room. What's it like as a tour manager for a club tour as opposed to an arena tour?
Well, one thing I found over the years of doing lots of both is that when you do sort of high-level arena tours, everything is kind of separated. So it's like, I'm here, this is my office, with a sign on the door that says tour manager or whatever. And then there's like a crew room with the guitar tech and the sound guy in it, and then there's a room for the band, and then there's a warm-up room, and then there's whatever. But when you do it like that, everyone has a lot more space and everyone's a lot more chill. Like it's when you stick everybody on top of each other and everyone's trying to use their laptops in a dressing room, or like the Wi-Fi doesn't work, or everyone's just pissed off. Like there's just stuff everywhere. Everyone makes a mess. Like even just sometimes the separation can just make everybody just like chill out a bit more. Yeah. And they come find you to like, I find obviously there's some bands that I do merch and tour manage at the same time, which sounds more stressful. But when you're sat in the office or sat in the dressing room or sat on the bus in front of these 7 or 10 dudes, if there's nothing to do, they just find things to ask you. I don't know how they do it. Like, it's mad. But if I'm busy, if I'm out, like Whitechapel, the best at it, because they know that if they can't see me, then I'm selling t-shirts.
Yeah.
So if they've got a problem, they have to kind of go, can I solve this problem myself without having to go all the way out there? And they actually go, wait, oh yeah, I can.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the big shows. I mean, in that time I hadn't been backstage at SEC before, and you've got the full catering. Literally, you go up and you just get your food. The 17 different options, and it's not a case of you try to find a restaurant to go. So take that to the club shows. Is there a pro to the club shows? I mean, especially when you're dealing with a headline band. When I was with you in Monster Truck, they were supporting a bigger band. Do you need to make concessions in for that bigger band that then you don't have to make when you are with Deafheaven and you're the headliner?
But it swings both ways, because on those big tours that I've done more of those kind of tours with Monster Truck than probably anybody else. But the catering aspect, the breakfast, lunch, and dinner full buffet, that is just like, you don't have to. The band can just, there's no, oh, Begley, the vegan place that I went to is closed. Can you? I'm hungry and I don't want to walk. Oh, it's like, especially in winter when it's freezing or snowing, I'm always just like, well, okay, yeah, like. So I like both. But with the smaller club shows, I actually prefer to not just tour manage, because sometimes I'm so used to having so much to do, is when you take away that much of it, it becomes you're just doing menial stuff. That's just like, why am I doing this? I should be doing something else more beneficial with my time. So when I'm busy and doing double duty, I switch between one and the other. and
Yeah.
there's no like downtime, and I'm just sat on the bus going, "Well, this sucks.
Yeah.
This is boring."
And as you say, if you've got folk in front, I find that a lot with Damnation. Learned in the first 3 years, if you put yourself in front of bands, they
They'll
will
ask
find
you.
something for you to get. I mean,
It's probably like having kids, isn't it? Isn't that what you're
it's exactly like, it doesn't even matter. Like, even if they're happy, it's like, well, what don't we have? Well, free merch. Yeah. Can we get free merch? Yeah. Like, so I'm like, seeing like, there's a lot of bands. I'd say 90% of bands that play Damnation I never meet, because it's not worth the hassle to say hello, because I need to go and buy pizza. So I'm like, I'm just hiding. And if
every day.
Exactly, that's your life. That is your life every day, mate. So, what's your relationship in terms of the other people around that band? Their agent, their manager, their crew. Where do you come into it?
It depends. Again, it kind of depends on each specific band. Some I have loads of involvement with on a daily basis. Like, well, I mean, not at the moment, obviously, but usually, like bands like Warhols, I've been with them for 5 years. So me and their manager speak every day because it's easier. It's easier to be constantly in the loop on what's going on rather than like a 2-hour phone call where I've got to sit and be like, what? Yeah. So sometimes I'll get sent the routing of the tour before the band even, before it's even like sorted. In terms of like, and that works better for everybody sometimes, because there will be things that their agent and things that their manager won't pick up on that I might.
Yeah.
So for example, I've seen Monstruck's a great example. When we were doing their headline tour probably 4 years ago, I got sent the initial routing of the tour that started in I think it started in Belfast or Dublin or something, was the first show, and then it was like to Bristol after that. And all the shows were like held or whatever. None of them were actually booked. And their manager sent it to me saying like, "Oh, take a look at this. What do you think?" I said, "Do not do Ireland as your first show."
Right.
And he said, "Why?" I said, "Well, you look at how much a flight from Toronto to Dublin is versus flying to London." And he looked and he was like, "Holy shit, okay, not doing that."
You'd made your wage before they'd even kicked off.
Because I know, because I've done that. Dublin is one of the most expensive airports in the world to fly into, and so is Portugal for some bizarre reason.
Okay.
So I know, don't start a tour in Portugal because it will cost you more money than it's just not worth it. You're better off just booking another gig the next day and then going home.
Right, and then so that's the manager. What does the manager? That's very helpful in your knowledge and the things you might pick up. But when you're having a chat with the manager, keep in touch with them daily. What do they want to know from you? With the capacity, if the promoters bumped them out money, what's any fight?
Oh, you mean actually on the road?
Yes.
Some of the bands that I work with, I send sometimes it's just as simple as a text every day. So it's like because some of my job is to essentially deal with stuff that the manager doesn't want to doesn't want to deal with, but shouldn't be dealing with it. Like he doesn't care about where the bus is parking. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't matter to him, but he does care if the bus breaks down.
Okay.
So sometimes, but that's the trust and that's the relationship that you build with managers before. Well, it's same in your role, really. If you're trying to book the same band and you've spoke to the same guy for 7 other bands, it's easier for you to just go, "Oi, mate, no," or like this, you have a bit of a relationship.
Yes,
better. The better that relationship, the easier it is for everybody.
And things that caught you out even after you'd heard from them. So like border payments. Tell me about border payments.
I mean, I think I've bribed border staff in 5 countries now.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? I mean, you think you get the odd but 5? And in what sense? They're stopping the tour bus and they're saying, what are they saying? We're going to hold you here and make sure your equipment's not loaded with cocaine.
Usually you can tell. Normally, honestly, it's normally not as hectic as that. It's normally just a kind of like, hurry up.
Really?
Like, I would like this done quickly, please.
And what could happen to you? What could happen to you if you don't pay that bribe? And
you just end up sitting there for 2 hours.
Right. Okay.
At the Belarusian border or whatever it is.
Right. So they're basically saying to you, "Look, we can do the checks that we need to check, and we can rip this bus apart, and we can do everything for you."
Oh, that kind of stuff. Oh no, not that kind of stuff. That's the police that are doing that. I mean, like, because if you go in and out of the EU, you have to do like a carnet of goods. So like if you go into Switzerland or Norway or like, I don't know what's a good example, like Serbia or Eastern Europe out that way, or Russia, you have to import and export your goods that you're carrying that you own.
Yep.
Get ready for this. This is like the Brexit nightmare incoming. So like you have to declare your goods that are leaving the EU, entering another non-EU country when you go in. So you like open a book for them to like, It's the most backwards, drawn out, stupid process ever for the level of stuff that we're carrying.
Yep.
So this carne is like a customs document that like declares how much of the value of the stuff that you're taking. So it's the same paperwork that you'd be filling out for a truck with 200 cars in it. And I'm doing the same thing, but for like 10 boxes of t-shirts and some guitar amps. It's like minuscule, but it's the same process. You have to go through the same process as if you're importing TVs to sell them.
Okay, so these guys are not the ones that say, look, he's a few £100 and we'll let it slide.
No, the border people are actually quite okay with that. I'm like, they're like,
right, on you go. I suppose for the hassle that it would take. So
yeah,
let's say,
because they look at it and go, oh, what? Oh, you've got €3,000 worth of merchandise. They're like, oh, can't be like, I don't want to deal with that. And I'm like, yeah, you do.
Yeah,
like, yeah, we do.
Yeah,
off we go.
Right, okay. And to wrap up before we kind of get into the Bossk stuff, so tell me how and why Dandy Warhols and Busted.
Dandy Warhols came from a recommendation from another manager that I know, but I didn't really get much of a choice in it. Like, it was kind of like, oh, Tom's free for these dates, aren't you, Tom?
Right, okay.
Yeah. And I didn't know, have you ever watched that documentary?
On them?
On it's Dandy Warhols, and is it Brian Jonestown Massacre?
No.
Watch that. And then add 20 years later to what I dealt with.
Right. So they were difficult. You tell me they were difficult?
It was horrible.
How long were you out with them?
It was like 3 weeks, but it was done. It was a difficult. I remember looking at it, going, "This is a really difficult tour." This, like, it was not easy. Like, it was like it was like Tramlines Festival in Sheffield, a headline show in Coventry, and then like a random place in Spain, and then Norway, and then random place in Spain, and then Norway, and then back to somewhere. It was like we had to fly all of it, and it was just no one really prepared the band for what kind of tour it was. I'd never met them. I didn't know anything about them. I did the stuff that I would normally do and heard nothing back from some of the details. So I just kind of assumed that, you know, their manager told me very, very specifically, there is no budget for a tour bus. And I was like, well, you're only doing 3 days in the UK. Yeah, that's silly.
Yeah.
But I don't think anyone really told the band that they were going to be in a van. That was the first part. Oh, no, I told them. I mean, I told them all. But no one, when I picked it, they also refused to wait for each other at the airport. So normally, if you've got people that are landing on separate flights, you know, drummer and guitarist land at 11, you know, whatever. And it's like, you can do it in like groups of 3 or groups of 4 or whatever. So you don't have to, so someone's not sitting at the airport for 9 hours waiting to get picked up. Yep. They refused to wait for anybody. We did 8 trips back and forth between Manchester and Sheffield Airport. I did that all day, like literally all day. Yep. So, and then one of them was like, oh, so when do we get the bus? Tomorrow? I was like, no. The bus? I was told no bus.
And okay, and Busted, how'd that come about?
Amazing, that was brilliant. I used to work with a guy called Rob Highcroft with View Me at 6, and he randomly needed cover. I think someone was having a baby. I think the guy that normally did it was having a baby or something. And he was like, oh, I need someone to cover it. It was like 4 festivals or something. And I was like, whoa, okay, that's a very large artist. I don't know if I can do that. Like, I've never, at that point, I'd never worked for a band like that.
So when would this have been? Just so we get back a timeline.
2015, I think.
Right. Okay.
And I at first was like, whoa, okay, wait, hang on. And they were headlining these festivals. I mean, they weren't massive festivals. They were kind of like those village, you know, the smaller city.
Yeah.
I don't know, gig on the green or whatever it is. You know, like the family festival kind of thing. And I was at first not very confident that I could even do it. I was like, are you sure about asking me to do this? I don't know about this. And he was like, no, it's dead easy. He was like, you won't believe how easy it is compared to the stuff that you've been doing. He was like, they were playing with at the time, it was 3 guys in the band and then 3 session people. And they had like amazing A-list crew. And he was like, you don't need to worry. He was like, all you need to do is sort the crew out, really. Like, the band are easy. They were touring with like a security guy that basically looked after them all. It was actually easy and really fun.
Yeah, and behind the scenes, is it a bit copy and paste from the metal scene and just kind of done your job there, or could you tell it was a very different scene?
It was very different. But like Charlie, I did Warped Tour with While She Sleeps about 2013, and Charlie from Busted was doing Warped Tour on his own as like an acoustic artist. So yeah. I'd actually met him. I'd hung out with him loads on Warped Tour, and I didn't think he'd remember. And he actually, the first email I sent to all the band guys being like, hey, I'm doing these shows, whatever. He immediately was like, oh yeah, man, great, sweet, can't wait. I was like, oh, okay. And they were great. They were awesome. It was easy. But
To be fair, he always came across like, I don't know that I ever met him, but he always came across in his interviews and his fight star stuff. He always came across like a decent guy.
Yeah, he's brilliant. He's awesome. He's not what I expected at all. Like, not at all. So, but that's the thing. That's the thing with this kind of job. It's like sometimes you work for a band like Busted and you're like, oh, these guys are the most down-to-earth, normal people I've ever met. Yeah. And then you go on tour with some small metal band playing to 200 people and they're just diva wankers. You're just like, how is that possible? But it is possible.
You see, when you get, it's a territories, countries you go to, you're like, oh, thank God, I cannot wait to get here. And likewise, as a regions you go, you just go, shit, this is going to be tough. That it's just an absolute mess.
Yeah, definitely. Germany is the easiest place in the world to do a gig. They are on it. Everyone should go just how to put on a gig in Germany.
They live up to their stereotype.
They're just on it. Yeah, machines, organised, efficient, on time. Everything's exactly what they said that it was going to be. And like I've turned up at shows being like, this is not. And I was like, this is what you said, and this is what it is. How do you not, like, I asked for this, you said yes, and then gave me this. Like, they're not even remotely close to the same thing. And that can be from audio stuff, backline stuff, like, you name it.
Really important stuff. No, the fact it's like a different brand of vodka. It's like, no, this is important.
Yeah, I mean, it ranges from, I did a DJ artist, what was it called, Wilkinson, at a festival in London about 2 years ago. And I was, again, covering for somebody. And the rider said, I don't know, 9 bottles of 1 litre bottles of Grey Goose vodka. I was like, that's a bit excessive for like, okay, for an afternoon. All right, well, okay. Went to the thing and they were like this tinier, they weren't the full litre size bottles. They were like one tiny step down from that. And I text their manager being like, is it, I don't know, like, it's not exactly 9 litres, but it's close enough. And he was like, no, he was like, just get it. Okay.
Just get the 9 litres.
I had to go to the guy. I was like, we've asked for 9 litres and you've given us like 7.5. And the guy was like, so, like, that's pretty close, right? I mean, like, is it essential? And I was like, I have no idea if it's essential or not, but I don't want to find out the hard way.
Yeah. So, in my experience, that doesn't happen with bands. I mean, every band's got a rider. I've always looked at a rider as a wee bit of a wish list. Not a technical rider. Technical rider must be comply to the whole point of the show, the PA, the amps, what needs to be there, make sure everything's right for the band. But the catering rider, I've always looked at as a bit of a wish list. And I kind of meet them at 75% of the way there. They ask for 2 bottles of Jack Daniels, or get a bottle of Jack Daniels, something like that. And then we can have a fight in the day. And 9 times out of 10, there's no fight because half the time the stuff gets left, so there's not even really an issue.
So it depends. That all depends. I've got a lot better at rider stuff over the years with everybody that I've worked for, in the sense of, like, I don't really do them these days. It's like, and I kind of learned it off with Converge, where they were just like, it comes from when you don't have any space to put anything. You're in a dressing room all day in some sweaty, like, tiny venue. There's no point in ordering a full cold meat spread, because just what's the point?
Yeah.
So I'm actually working with a lot of my artists where I'm like, I don't want any of this extra fluff. Like, there's no point. Like, no, you don't need you don't need a tub of butter every day. Like, what is the point? So, like, I've got quite good at making sure that there isn't as much waste, and being like, this is what you're going to get every day without fail. These 6 things or 7 things or whatever it is. And the rest, we want cash, so that I can give the cash to the band. If you want to go Nando's or whatever, then you can just use your cash. Like, I've sort of trained all my bands to follow the same sort of shit. So I'm not so I'm not wasting time going, these are cherry tomatoes, and I said big ones. Because that just is like, but I used to do that. I have done that lots.
Yeah. And the thing is, for a promoter's point of view, don't get me wrong, band is sliding scale. Sometimes you get a band that their fees £300 and the rider they're trying to present you costs £300, and you're like, but that's
also to do with cost too. Yeah.
That's never happening. But I mean, if you get a band that come and say, look, we only need these 6 items in food. I mean, I'll get them their 6 items. It's like, it's the ones that these unfortunately for us, we get the festival rider that Hellfest, Wacken, and fucking Maryland Death Fest get, and you're like, hey guys, you're flying into Leeds for one day to play. Okay, it says festival in the title, but it's no download. So
no. But again, that sometimes just depends on the experience of the person tour managing. Like, if I'm doing a fly-in show in Portugal on a headline set, there's no point in getting any rider. because you're not going to be there. You're not going to be on the ground long enough to eat it.
Yeah.
You fly there, you get there, and you're on stage.
Yeah.
So there's no point in. But that's the sort of things we were talking about earlier, where it's like hiring a tour manager of experience and all those things. That's the kind of thing that you end up doing. So there's, you send. Sometimes the booking agent will send you a rider, even as a promoter, I'm sure, where the agent's like, hello, here's my 16-page document with like 8 different types of tea and all this nonsense on it.
Yes.
And you as the promoter, you're kind of like, well, in my contract, it sort of does say rider. Yeah, okay, so I sort of have to. Sometimes I can come to the rescue and go, don't worry about any of that. Give me 2 cases of water and 40 beers. And you're like, cool, done.
Absolutely. I mean, like, I wish it was a wee bit more come and going in this year. Look, we could charge a concession for merch, but we don't. So we're a bit like, other venues, we don't take any of your merch money. So gonna no bust my balls for the 3rd bottle of Jack Daniels on the rider. Exactly. Like a wee bit because you're right, it does. You do sign a contract, and that contract does say includes a rider, and they do have a solid argument to come back and say we do need the 13 different types of tomatoes. But as you say, it's never happened because no band's ever said, "Oh, we really we need the tomatoes."
But it flips both ways, doesn't it? If you're doing a headline show and the show is sold out and the show is making money, the artist will see a percentage, of the profit after the cost or whatever. So you don't want to be like messing about with spending loads. If the show is sold out and the band's going to make money, don't spend anything. Yeah. Don't spend anything that you don't need to spend, because the band will just end up making more money. And that's one part of my job that's an important part, that a lot of the band members especially never see my involvement in how much, say they make an extra £1,000 profit, they don't see how much of that was done by me and how much of that was done by the promoter, mostly by me.
Absolutely. That's another problem with having this festival attached to what's essentially the same as the show they did the night before, is because the band don't get a split at the other side of however many tickets Damnation sells. I think, well, firstly, you pay more than the headline show, and then secondly, things like riders become more extravagant because they're a bit like, well, that's not saving us any money, so you might as well just get us on it.
But I've had it both ways, where you rock up to a festival and you're playing, headline the show and you're getting paid, say, £10,000 to play this festival or whatever. I'm not going to like kick up a stink over the £7 worth of stuff that isn't happening. Especially, you know what I mean? Like I'm quite good. You have to gauge, you have to pick your battles. Yeah. But again, at the same time, I've done shows where it hasn't broken even. There's, that the promoter hasn't, the band isn't going to make extra money or whatever. So that's ironically the days when I submit my full rider.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I fill the bus up with all that stuff, because you're not going to make any. You have to be a bit creative with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms, so you said Germany's a country that you look forward to arriving in. Where's a country you're like, oh, this is going to be a slog night after night?
It depends on the band I'm with. Obviously, Spain's really difficult to tour logistically. Really difficult. No buses fit anywhere. You can't drive. It's like, Madrid and Barcelona. Madrid is the worst. Barcelona, because I know there's only a few clubs that you can do those kind of things at, so I've kind of got used to dealing with like 2 clubs. But every single time I go to Madrid, it's somewhere else, and it's never easy. It's like you get there and there's 700 flights of stairs down with no lift, and it's all the venue. I mean, it's an old place, isn't it? It's just an old. The venues aren't the brand new spanking warehouse in Germany with a forklift truck. It's like some bar nightclub.
Yeah.
They don't have the venue or the infrastructure that Germany has, for example, and it's just more difficult. So same with South America. Same thing.
It's nothing to do with culture then. It's purely to do with physically the buildings.
Yeah, that usually. Yeah, I mean, sometimes the language barrier is a little bit difficult in certain places. But I mean, I've gone to Eastern Europe where we've had like, I can't think, Serbia, for example. No, not a single person that was helping us load in Serbia spoke English. Not a single one of them. But I've got good at going this. Wow.
Right.
Like you kind of get by once you've had enough practice, rather than just getting pissed off that the guy doesn't know what you're talking about. Learn to do it without speaking, and it's like stuff like that becomes really easy.
Right. Okay. Like Bossk.
Practice.
Let's discuss Bossk. Now, not only did your 2020 shit on your plans for everything that you're doing, but you did have Bloodstock to play. It was never announced, but you were going to play Damnation this year also, which looks like that's now in the can. What's happening? Is a light at the end of the tunnel for Bossk? Are you guys starting to try to plan something for 2021? You want to get these shows locked back in? What's the future for Bossk?
We've been talking about that. Well, we spoke about that maybe a month ago between ourselves, and I kind of handle all the sort of major decision making in that department to at least present to everybody, rather than it's not like. So I sort of handle the what should we be doing in that world. but it's not, to be honest, as it's got longer, I don't want to book anything. It's pointless. Like, it's not, I think about a lot of bands are kidding themselves and kidding their fans a little bit, going, oh, this is going to happen in March next year. And you don't know if anything's going to happen in March next year. So I think booking something and then cancelling it and then booking it again and then cancelling it and booking it again, I just don't want to do that. I'm not interested in doing that.
No, I mean, it makes total sense. I mean, in terms of Damnation this year, will we just do the deal right here, right now? And if it's available and gone, Bossk can be the first band to be announced for 2021.
Sure, go on.
Deal.
But something like that's different.
Yeah,
because I mean that's a lot longer away. But like trying to tell. I mean, we were in talks earlier in the year about after the Bloodstock thing and after the little festivals we were doing in the summer. I knew I was going to be so busy with work, so I didn't really want to book anything after that too close. So we were talking about doing something in November, and we were talking about doing some headline shows, but I don't feel right doing it. It just doesn't. I don't know. I wouldn't buy a ticket for a gig right now. Put it that way.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of my point. I mean, with Damnation and we'll wait till next week. But really, we're waiting till next week just because it's all marked 2 months to the festival. But you're right. There's no progress. I kept waiting for maybe some sign of progress that we're going to attempt sort of show and see what the results were going to be, and it's never happened. And I'm also starting to get a wee bit uncomfortable. Like, I don't want Damnation to be the test. You know,
exactly. Right. I don't want to find out that it's a nightmare. Not with Bossk. No way. I'll do it in a professional aspect, but I don't want to find. No way. Just the thought of doing it just doesn't make me want to do it.
Yeah, and in terms of, and a lot of people, you're right. I see a lot of people looking at January 1st, 2021, like some magic day. It's going to hit midnight, and then suddenly
the problem solves. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't listen. People are trying to be optimistic. I don't want to have a go at them for doing it, but I think you're right. I think that a tour for. Saying that a tour is going to be available for January or February 2021 just because the year's different. I mean, it's going to be no different to December 2020 unless there is some sort of program, there is a vaccine, or as Donald Trump says, it just disappears.
But even then, there's still going to be a gap there. There's not just going to be like, it doesn't just snap back on instantly. I don't want to be part of the first wave of. We can be like that because we're in a position that we can be. There are obviously some bands that are not in that position, but. We don't feel comfortable just going, oh, well, it'll be fine. Let's just book. We were talking to a couple of bands about doing like a 3-way British band tour. What did they say? I think they wanted to do it in March or April or something. And I was just like, there's no point in thinking about, like, I get it. I was like, I would love to say that's an amazing tour and great lineup. That'd be brilliant. Yeah, we'd kill that. There'd be 1,000 people at every show. Yeah, amazing. Let's go. Let's book it now. But at the end of the day, no one's played to 1,000 people yet. So we don't like. I would, even when it starts coming back a little bit, I will still be apprehensive about booking Bossk shows until it's been like done a bit.
Absolutely. In terms of the bookings, like, so you were due to do Bloodstock and, as we say, Damnation this year. The Bloodstock's an odd one for Bossk. I mean, for all the genres that Bloodstock book, post rock, post metal, isn't that? So how did that come about?
Well, we played it. I know Alan, Vicky's husband, really well. I've been working with him. He works in the touring industry with like a bunch of logistics company. And he had been saying to me for ages, like 2 or 3 years before, he really liked the band. And he was telling me like, oh, you should come play Bloodstock. You should come play Bloodstock. I was like, what, the Thrash Festival? Like, no, like that doesn't sound like a good, I mean, I say no to loads of shows that just don't fit on purpose.
Yes.
But he basically, after two years of badgering me to do it, I was like, oh, all right, kind of, like, I took a bit of a punt on it. I was just like, all right, whatever, like, fine, sure, why not? We've never done it. Let's see. And it was amazing.
Yeah.
It was so good, that show, the first time we played it. And I was actually genuinely on stage just being like, okay, this is brilliant. Like, it was awesome.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Weirdly so, though. I wasn't expecting that kind of reaction for our set. I mean, I can't remember who played our day that year. But it was no one. I don't think there was anyone that even. We were like the slowest band the whole festival.
Yeah, because they're not even. You're right. I mean, there's a lot of power metal, there's a lot of thrash, there's a lot of old school European metal, that kind of stuff. There isn't a lot of even doom. I mean, there's no huge amount of doom there. Never mind going into post rock, and they don't have the bands like Amon Ra and Cult of Luna. And so it was when I saw you on the poster a couple of years back, I was like, oh, you clearly made an impression if they wanted you back this year.
Yeah, we've done it twice now. This would have been the third time.
Oh, is it really? Is it the third? I thought it was the second time, but that'd been the third time you'd been back.
First time I played, the second time I didn't, the third time would be this year.
Yeah, is that tough? I mean, going back to the tour managing and then the commitments with Bossk, is it you played the second time you came back to Damnation, you weren't involved with that live lineup?
Yeah, it'd be the same.
Is that tough when you know that Bossk are going to be playing pretty decent shows in the UK?
Yeah, that year was really tough, and that's why it's not happening again.
It's fitting round just
at the time, though. To be honest, I felt dead selfish saying, "Oh, well, we've got to cancel the show because I can't do it because of work." That was already booked. So all those shows were already booked before I found out that I couldn't do it. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's not like I booked, like I think the first one was the Armour show in London, where I was like, shit, I'm now going to be on tour. And it was like, well, hang on, this is a really good show that we need to be doing. Like, it's a bit selfish of me to be like, no one can do it because I can't. And I didn't really like that. Didn't fit too well with me either. So, but it just didn't work out doing it that way. So we've scrapped that idea. So we're not doing that anymore. Like it was possible, and we did some shows with various versions of the lineup or whatever. Not just those. We did a couple with Alex and a couple with other members playing instead.
Right.
And we got through it. But the band works better when it's the proper people that should be there.
Yeah, and talking about absolute prime slots and shows, ArcTanGent. You guys show back up for last year. James, the guy who books ArcTanGent, he's got, I don't know, $100,000 screen that's been
OPEF screen. I think it was was it OPEF or Coheed? One of them. I think it was OPEF, right?
I thought it was Carpenter Brute that needed it for
that's it. Yeah, it was them. And I think Coheed had some stuff too for it.
So what do you, like, a lot of times when you get a band like that, they just wouldn't allow a band like Bossk to use that production, but it must have been pretty decent to allow you guys, or all the artists to use it. I mean, that'd be a dream come true for Damnation, just fire up all the backdrops on it. So you get told how far in advance, and what do you do with that information?
Ages in advance. Because James told me something about having, because me and him are really good friends as well, like same with you, and we were talking loads in the lead up to it. Once we'd sort of initially confirmed for playing that year, he was talking to me a lot about that, and he was actually dead stoked that he was getting that in for them to use. And I think the more that he got into it, the more he was like, actually, this makes loads of sense. This will make lots of things better. Like, because the way that tent changed from the few years before that, it was very open on one side. Yep. Did you go the years when it was a big white?
I've been every year.
Right. So the previous main stage, having that video screen just wouldn't have worked because it was just too light.
Yeah.
He basically let it slip to me that they were going to have that, and I just said, well, can you find out, is everybody on the stage allowed to use it? And he said, well, yeah, it's mine, I'm bringing it for this whatever band it was playing. They need it, they won't play without one. So he worked out the budget for having it all weekend, and everybody could use it, is eventually what happened. So once I found that out, I was like, interesting. And I was like, I remember sending him all these messages about, well, how dark is it going to be in there? Because we played early.
Yeah.
I was like, how dark is it going to be? Can you show it? And he was just like, why do you want to know all this? And I'm like, well, because I'm about to go pay someone to make some like mad thing to go on it. And he was like, oh, I thought you were just going to put a logo on it or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, I thought, because I nearly did send him, because he was like, he emailed me in the advance of the festival being like, can you send me a logo for the backdrop? I was like, wait a sec. I know loads of people. Why can't, hang on. Give me 1 sec. And I didn't send it to him. And I commissioned this guy to make this, whatever, like scene or big, it was like a 45-minute long, like sort of screensaver essentially, but using loads of NASA images and stuff. And I was so stoked with it. I was so stoked. And I had a bunch of other bands that played the festival, a bunch of English bands come up to me that were also, I mean, there was a few different bands that played the main stage at that year, but I think we were the only one that was like, check it out.
Yes. I mean, why wouldn't you? I mean, how many opportunities are you going to get to have that?
Yeah. But that's the sort of one of the things that I do bring to the band is that like a band in our scene that doesn't have someone like me in it wouldn't have thought probably to be like, hang on, let's make a massive epic movie to play at the background of, well, because we were thinking about trying to sync it, so it'd be like there'd be stuff happening and it would be like perfectly in sync, but it was just too difficult because our songs have not really. The guy basically wanted like double the money to do that.
Right.
So I was talking with this guy to do like a flowing thing that wasn't necessarily it didn't matter that it wasn't perfectly in sync. But that's just me using some of my touring experience, because I've done that for other bands and I've been involved in the process of getting that kind of content made for other bands. Like Bring Me the Horizon, for example, the absolute kings of that.
Yeah.
So like I've used some of the little things I picked up on the road with other bands to be like, that's a good idea, sick.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, it worked well. It really added a lot to what would be another Bossk set. So
yeah, I loved it. I was honestly that was the best show we've ever played by far. Like we might have performed better at some other shows, but that was the best show. But I think for me anyway, Bossk has ever played.
Yeah, huge big crowd to look at the main stage, packed. Get that huge big screen behind you. It was. See, every time you were done, did you make any money for that show, or did it all go into production?
Fuck. But then, to be fair, though, I knew, like, we paid. I mean, we used that show as a point, as like almost like a marker.
Yeah.
Because we've actually filmed. We paid for like video people to film the set, and like the content that we use for the screen is going to be used in the music video coming up or whatever. Like, so, but I know how to make the most of those kind of events.
Yeah.
Because I've just seen bands do it so often, and so like, oh wait, you're playing download main stage? Yeah, okay. Well, let's get a videographer, let's get a photographer, let's get a thing, let's get this, let's get this. Yeah. Let's make the most of that opportunity rather than just play the show and then go, oh shit, I wish we'd. Yeah. Why didn't we? Oh.
Because the first thing you're going to get an agent. You are the band's agent
at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah. So an agent would use exactly that and say, Bossk played 4,000-5,000 people, whatever it was. Look at them. So the promoter, me, I get a visual or an image of, look at you guys doing this. So suddenly you're like, oh fucking, she's had to better up that price. You know what I mean?
Well, but one of the good things about me being the band's agent is as the band's progressed, we don't really care about making money. As long as I can make it so that it's the best experience for us as possible. Money is kind of like, I'm not saying it doesn't matter. It obviously does matter but I know how much stuff costs. Yeah. So I know I can figure out, okay, if we're going to go do a show at ArcTanGent, I know we need this much, which will pay for this much. And then I can go, all right, well, we need this much extra to cover all this extra stuff. Like we stayed in a hotel and Airbnb whole weekend, whatever. Like, but I know that's the best way for us to do it. So if it meant I had to raise another £1,000 for us to do ArcTanGent in the way that was the best way possible, then that's what we did.
Yeah. And so going ahead, because, well, you've spoken to me about the way that you guys are not a traditional touring band. You don't just sign up and away for 20 odd dates and then back into another. You really target events and make the most of those events for your appearances. So where is it you guys are hoping to, what shows you guys try to hope to tie in? Let's say 2021 doesn't have the pandemic. Where would you like to tie in?
Well, we've got to do the one thing that we've not done since. I mean, we've been back playing now since what? We've been back playing since for 8 years now, which is longer than we were a band for in the first place, which is odd and a bit of a weird position to find ourselves in because we've never actually done a headline tour in those 8 years.
Really?
Nothing. Yeah. Well, we did. I'm sorry, we've done a couple of one-offs fitted in somewhere. We did a release show in Leeds and we've done one show, I think, in London, but that's it.
Okay.
But to be honest, I'm fine with that.
Yeah,
we do need to do that, but I'm not in a huge rush to do it. So I mean, that is the first thing that we really should do that we haven't done is a proper headline tour. But I feel like it's cheating a bit to just tag on an audio noir tour like next year because it's been 6 years since the record come out by then. Yeah. So I think that for the next step of us doing that, we're going to have to do a new record and then do that. And that's like, but we're in no rush. It's not going to. If it happens in the summer, cool. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Like we'll see.
Yeah, take it. And let's end it in I've been cracking talking to you. I'm really glad you did this, and it's great that sort of the take of a tour manager and obviously playing Bossk. So, what's happening with the next record? What's happening with Bossk in the future? Tell me something.
It's finished. The next record is finished. We're still working on some technicalities, shall we say, which will become very apparent and understandable once we are allowed to talk about it. But we've already started. That was supposed to be out by now, probably. But that's kind of gone on the shelf for a little bit, especially with the pandemic at the minute. It's like it's a nightmare anyway, because obviously bands want to tour and we can't. So we're not really in a position that we can just drop a record and then sit for 6 months. So we wanted to wait a little bit and just tie that in with touring because we haven't done any in so long anyway. So we're kind of having that sit bubbling, waiting until kind of wait until it makes more sense. And then we've actually already started, I think we're probably 4 songs into demoing the next record. So we hit a bit of a stride. We hit a bit of like a creative flush, I guess. So we just kept going. And like we were in the beginning of the lockdown, we were sort of finishing the mixing process of this record. And like we were all starting the next one already. So me and Rob and Alex have been working on stuff real hard over the last 2 months or something. So we've already got we've already probably got half an album demo again. So we're going to try and go, when sort of things return to a little bit more normal, we're going to double dip ourselves, basically, like bang, bang. We're going to release one, tour for a little bit and do some stuff we're trying to be more active off the next record than we've been before. That's the next step, I guess. We want to do a proper tour, like a UK tour, maybe a couple of European shows, and then follow it with another record straight away.
Yeah. Well, that is great news, and I hope that you can get back into some sort of employment in this industry sooner rather than later, and we can get those.
I mean, there's that too. There's that part to consider too. So if the world comes back on in January and I have to go on tour for 12 months, then I have to go on tour for 12 months. So I can't really choose right now.
I'm trying to end it in a positive note here, Tom.
Yeah, I like it. By the way, I like your little Damnation man cave you've got going on these days. It's very nice. And
listen, the other shows get Cult Honor here. I've got Alcest.
It looks great.
A couple of Nordic Giants posters up there. So yeah, I try to check
the one by your left elbow. I think Bossk played, right? Yeah.
Well, there's a couple there. I've got one down here that Bossk played.
Wizard one, yeah.
The electric Wizard one. They were
amazing.
Yeah. So
got some very good memories.
Let's get Bossk back for 2021. We'll catch up, have a few beers, and let's leave it at that. Take care of yourself.
You don't have to ask me twice, mate. I'm dying to play Damnation. Don't you worry.
Done, mate. Thank you.
Thank you very much.